I'm going to essentially walk through the years and I'll be asking you questions. And if at any point you're uncomfortable with a question or you don't want to answer it, just say move on and I'll move on.
Okay.
And what we'll do is we're going to stop at 2005. And the reason why is it takes about 20 years minimum for any political stuff to truly see what the impact is. That's about how long it takes minimum. So we're just going to stop at 2005 because this, as of this recording, it's 2025, so that would be 20 years ago. And then we'll go back and ask about your Christian service in life, and that will go all the way up to present day because this is a ministry of the church. The church is allowing us to do this. So if you're ready, I say let's get started.
I'm ready.
All right. So, Brother Kyle Kirby, how you doing today?
Fine, sir.
All right. Now, do you remember when your parents were born? What years?
No.
No? All right. Well, now you were born in 1929.
Right.
Now, Herbert Hoover was the president, and we were in the middle of a Great Depression.
Right.
Now, I know you don't remember anything about 1929, but did your parents or grandparents or family members ever talk about the time around when you were born and what was going on then?
Not that I remember. Far back as I remember is when my daddy said it in the time, back in those times, they paying taxes that they work on the roads, the county roads. And that was their payment for paying the county taxes. They could work it out on the county roads with their mules and things like that. That's as far back as I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, moving a little up through the years, from 1932 to 45, Franklin Roosevelt, FDR was our president.
Right.
And do you remember anything being said about him, or do you have any opinions of FDR?
FDR was a good president. Fact is, he put our economy into growing because he started CCC camps, and that was camps similar to army camps, so to speak. But you joined it, and they put you. I read one out in the forest, a CC camp out there, and I forget how many people I had out there, but it was kind of an army situation, and they took care of the stuff in the forest out there. That was their job, to take care of it. So I do remember back, and that would be back there early now.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I remember going out to the CC camps out in the forest there.
Yeah.
That's been a long time ago.
Well, got another couple questions that you're probably not going to remember much on, because you were young in the 30s, the whole decade. You were 9 or 10 at the very end of that decade.
Right.
But in 1933, Adolf Hitler was brought to power in Germany. And in 1938, Time magazine named Adolf Hitler as their Man of the Year. So I was wondering, did you hear any conversations or anyone saying anything before the war about this funny mustachioed looking German?
No, not that I remember. Not remember because, well, back in those days, everybody didn't have 2 or 3 radios in the house. And so I don't know what year that we got a radio. We had one of the first battery radios, you know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Dad had bought one that carried a long battery, you know, and the air outside, you know, of that. Well, we had one there, and that was the first one in that part of the country. And people actually came in to listen to news on that drum because that was, now there was radios before, but they run off of car batteries. And sometimes they didn't work too good because one of our neighbors had one that worked off a car battery, and it wasn't too reliable, I put it that way. Yeah.
All right. Now, also in that same time period, in Europe, about 38, 39, the war started, but we were out of it until 41 because Pearl Harbor happened, and then we joined and we stayed until the end in 1945.
Right.
Now, there were rationings as well as other things too. From 41 to 45, when we were in the war, you're getting a little older at that point. What memories do you have about the war? Because you were too young to fight, but you were old enough to remember some things. What do you remember about that time?
Well, because certain stuff was rationed, you had to have stamps to, like get, I won't say sugar, but you had to have stamps to get it. And I know that one of my uncles had a car, and you had to have stamps to get tires for the car. That was just part of it, and a lot of stuff was rationed. And if you didn't have the stamps, you couldn't buy, because that was just part of the way that they were controlling the amount of stuff that went out into service, was through the stamp system of the things that was stamped. Now everything wasn't stamped, but like sugar, I believe sugar was one of them. It was hard to get a hold of at that time. Yeah.
Now, were you ever sent by yourself with your stamps to the store to buy anything for the family?
Not that I remember. I would have been too young. I lived too far from it, I guess.
All right. Now, at the end of the war in 45, 5 major events happened, and you would have been about 16 or so at the time. So I'm curious about each one of those events. What do you remember? The first thing is VE Day, Victory in Europe. The Germans were defeated. What do you remember about that, if anything? Did you hear it on the radio first or the paper?
Well, I heard it on the radio that the German people had run out of oil because they didn't have enough oil to carry on. And when they run out of oil, they were easy picking. Now that's my understanding of what I picked up on them. And Russia just about had Germany whooped, and the United States joined in, if I remember right. And so then they with us took care of Russia in that war. So the United States was there kind of in the defeat of Germany. I remember that part of it. Now, subject to my remembrance could be a little off, but basically that's my story.
All right. Now, another thing that happened same year, FDR, the only president to ever serve more than 2 terms, passed away. Did you hear that on the radio first as well?
Yes, yeah.
Was there any thoughts on that? Did any commentary from the family, or just, oh, that's sad?
Well, he was respected because he was in his 3rd term, and people had respect for him. And like I said, he did kind of bring us out of recession with the CC camps and things of that. Was his operation, which brought the mechanism of money back in the circulation, is one of the things about that time.
Okay. And then, of course, when he died, Truman stepped in his place and was sworn in as the new president. Did you have any thoughts about Truman? Because usually the vice president was an afterthought, kind of.
Yeah. He was known. He was known for picking up a dog by the ears, if I remember right. That was one of it. He had some beagles, I think it was, and I think he picked one up by his ears, and so he was adding. I remember that he was kind of hard-headed. In other words, he kind of wanted things to go in the way that they should go. So he was kind of a driver to me as a kid. Now, let me put it that way. That he was a man of his word. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Now, the 4th major thing that happened in that year is we went to Nagasaki and dropped an atomic bomb in Japan, and then we went to Hiroshima and dropped another atomic bomb, or I may have those backwards as far as which one was first. But did you have any understanding of what that meant other than just a really powerful bomb? And did you or anyone around you have any thoughts on that?
Well, all we knowed, or all that I knowed, was that it was quite a bomb. It was quite destructive, and the second bomb was the idea that floating in my memory that ended that. In other words, that brought the end of the war on. That second bomb did. That, and of course, they gave how many people that they thought had been killed, with the bombs. In other words, in Japan was ready to holler calf rope because they had about destroyed the island of Japan.
And that brings me to the fifth and final thing that major that happened that year, VJ Day, Victory in Japan. So was that coinciding with the atomic bombs when you found out, or was it a little after that they surrendered, or that you heard about it, if you can remember?
Well, I don't remember. I don't remember nothing special about it. I just know or remember that they surrendered, but I don't remember any activity, yay or nay, for or against, for the VJ Day. Since you mentioned, I do remember the VJ Day, but I don't remember nothing about the VJ Day. Nothing whatsoever.
All right. Well, now that the war's over, we got a couple of years to, figure out what we're doing and all. And apparently, you figured out that you would go and meet a girl and get married, because in 1948, I believe it was, you married Miss Dorothy. So, I'm curious, how did you meet her, and was there any tension at the wedding? Was her father okay with you?
Was it? No. My uncle, me and Dot had went with him and his wife 3 months before, and they got married, and so then we went to Iuka, Mississippi, and got married on July the 3rd, 1948. And I met her because at that time we were still talking. Everybody in the neighbor didn't have a car, and he had a school bus that was called a chicken cook, and it was a long, instead of being that our buses now, it was real long, and you had to bend over to walk in this bus. And he had bought one. Of course, the county did away with them, and he bought one of them. He run a store down here, and every Saturday night he made a trip up there to the theater in Hartsville, and anybody that wanted to go, they'd ride that bus up there. And so she and a lot of other people, was riding the bus. And I don't know how that actually met, but anyway, I guess I just fell first sight or something. Even though she was real young, but we kicked it off and lived happy for 70-something years.
Well, about a year later or so, in 1949, Dottie was born. So I got to ask, how'd you go from being a teenager, we just got out of war, you get married, now you're a father? How was that when it hit you?
Well, I grew up working because I meant to have a decent living. I worked in Decatur when we laid the crops by, let's say, June or something like that, July. I'd go to Decatur and get me a job. I wanted enough money. When I wanted to buy a Coca-Cola, I could buy me a Coca-Cola. So I did, and anyway, in 48, when I didn't even finish, I drove a school bus, and then I didn't take my bus back to school the last day. My brother took it, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law had wanted me to go to Birmingham and live, or we lived out at Lisbon, out Bessemer, and live with them and go to work for TCI. And so on the day that I was supposed to deliver my bus, we started to Birmingham, to where they lived, and I hired on at TCI immediately after that. And before I forget what the date was that I hired on there, but then on the 3rd of July, Dot and I got married. That's a long time ago.
Yep. Now, after Dottie was born, 49, we go to 1950. We got another war. It's the Korean War.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever serve in the military?
No, because you see, I wanted to get old enough to go into service on the World War II. But see, I was only 16 after, even right after they we declared the peace. So in other words, I never could get in that. And then I married, you see, then, or we married in 48. Well, back then we had classifications.
Mm.
The Army classified you as so and so and so and so number, certain thing like that. And so when I had married and had a child, then in the 50s, then with my card, I forget what it was, but anyway, I had a dependent. Well, that put me in a classification that I would be drawn into the Vietnam War. Now, of course, some of those guys around here, our Army guys, they got drafted into it.
Mm.
But I mean, I wasn't in that, so I didn't go. No, I never served because I was too young for that and too married
and kid
in the Vietnam War.
Okay.
So I didn't. I was too young for one and too old for the other one, I guess you'd say.
All right. So that I wasn't going to ask this, but since you said that, I do want to know. Even today, all U.S. males, when they turn 18, they have to sign up for selective service. I had to do it when I turned 18 and registered to vote, but we no longer have a draft. Do you think we would be better off, worse off, or the same if we instituted a draft?
I think we'd be better off if we instituted a draft because there's a lot of things that us young men didn't know, and I figured the same today. You know what I'm trying to say is that I'm proud I didn't because I done had a wife and a kid, but I think it ought to be to draft because we know we don't have no idea what's going to happen in this war business now.
Mm.
So if we need them, have we got a way of getting soldiers now?
Yeah.
I mean, now they may have. I'm strictly talking to what I don't know.
Right.
But in other words, can the Army call up 100,000 guys? You know what I'm trying to say, like you used to. So that I don't know. I don't know how that's arranged.
Right. Well, going back to the 50s, now the Korean War started in 50, and either 52 or 53 it ended. But in 1952, we had an election, and Dwight D. Eisenhower was elected president. Now, this was the first U.S. election because at the time you had to be 21. So this would have been the first election where you were old enough to vote. Did you vote? And if so, if you don't mind my asking, did you vote for Eisenhower or the other guy?
I really can't tell you that because I don't know. Back in my bringing up, Democrats was the only one. In the countries I come, the community I come from, everybody was a Democrat. So I don't know how, honestly don't know how that I voted for it. But if I voted to be on the Democratic ticket at that time.
And do you remember if you did indeed vote for that election? Because that would be the first one you were old enough.
Well, positive I cannot say yes, but bet you I did.
Okay. And then another thing happened in 1952. Patsy was born. So now you have another daughter. And then your first one now has a sibling. How was that, watching Dottie now with a sibling? That's something that's new that she had never experienced before. Was she excited as a little child? Can you remember, or how was that once Patsy was born?
Well, I would say that there was always love between them. I never thought that I ever seen them that they, now they got into it. Like there's the one of the spankings that I gave them. was I had built a house down here, and I made them a sandbox. And I bought some sand and put in it, and I was standing in the kitchen door. At that time, in fact, at that time I didn't have a bathroom. We had an outbuilding, mind you. And they was out there playing in the sandbox, and Patty. Then the toys at that time was made out of steel.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're made out of plastic, no good. But anyway, Patty was playing with a shovel over there, and Dottie reached over and got it and took it away from her. Patty just got up and turned over and took it away from her and hit her over the head with it. And forced me, I'd go out there and spank them. But I was laughing this way while I was giving them a spanking for fighting. But our girls, I never seen any. Oh, I'm sure I know they disagreed. They had to do that. We're human beings, but no dissent between the girls. Never to the extent of what you would call dissent.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that was good. Now, 1954, some things happened, and just to warn you, this may or may not be a uncomfortable subject. So, first thing that happened in 54 that we'll talk about is Brown versus the Board of Education, which said that schools could no longer be segregated, and it was at that time that they started integration. Now, the South, especially in Alabama, it wasn't immediate. It took a while. I don't even think it started in the 50s. But I was wondering, when you heard about that, were you growing up in the South, your parents, since the Civil War, you never knew anything other than segregation. So what were your thoughts on that, having young children that would experience this without having ever experienced anything else?
Well, certainly it was hard for the South, myself and the South, because like I growed up was segregated. Well, now I've never felt that the black man should be downgraded. But in other words, on my job, I had some black guys that working around me and everything, and we were their utmost of friends. I've never had enmity that I thought against the black man, but it wasn't a case of here come a white family and a black family together. That just at that time it just wasn't the way it was. So I mean, all the life was a no. And here you come in, so it had to be a different. You can trade cars, and people notice that you got a different car.
Yeah.
So any emotion makes changes in people and their thinking.
So a year later, in '55, more of that sort of thing happened. Rosa Parks did not move from her seat on the bus, and that kick-started the civil rights movement.
Right.
Now, for however your viewpoint is, Alabama was sort of a star in that movement. Rosa Parks thing happened here. There was the March in Selma and everything else. And I believe Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor at a church here in Alabama as well. Then there's the mess that with the dogs and the fire hydrants, and George Wallace, who was our governor at the time. What did you think about all this? Did it affect your job, or your family in any way? Were you neutral, against, for? What was your opinions?
Well, I don't reckon it affected me in no way, if you put it that way. Again, because that was something that we wasn't accustomed to, and that something we're not accustomed to is always odd. We've got to. The thing that come out of that to me was this: that our government, and I'll admit that I thought maybe our government was overstepping itself, but I was proud of the fact that our government then could lay the law down of what was going to happen. That the black and the whites had to. And I've always been proud that our government was stout enough that the dissent of a lot of people was overruled, because I'm going to use the word constitution rights. You know what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. That's what I got out of that I'm proud that our government, when we state to the Constitution what the Constitution of our country stands for, then where I, like, believe it or not, and I'm still proud it's got that kind of authority.
Hmm.
I like that. I like the authority of the federal government when it's dealing right. Okay.
I understand. Now, something else happened in the 50s, and I want to dwell on this a little bit longer than I did the other two because I know as men, we dream of, one day sharing our knowledge, with our sons. And you in 1958, Ken was born. You now have two daughters and a son. How was that when you first held your son in your arms? Now you have a boy.
Well, I was quite proud of it because I thought me and my son could conquer the world if we needed to. You know what I'm trying to say? I had a buddy.
Mm.
I was proud of my son, and still am. Uh, but I was proud when he come along, and we've always had a good relationship. I reckon, as far as I know. If if you're mad at me, I don't know. I don't know. I put it that way. Yeah.
Now, the age difference between Ken and Patsy is not big enough to ask this question, but it is big enough for Dottie and Ken. Uh, did she really enjoy having a baby brother, or was she old enough to not really care? She helped out when needed, but that's pretty much it? Or how was their relationship being so far apart in age, that is?
Oh, I think that the girls, I think they helped mother with Ken. I think that was really a blessing to mom, and of course me for the son. So I think that the time there really helped where the girls could help with Ken. You know, they could play with Ken and when he was a child. So I think that the age limit there really made it really worked out good. What I
Okay.
think.
All right. So we move a couple years forward. In 1960, something never before happened. Thanks to there being this medium called television now, uh, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon had a debate on television. So I'm curious, did you own a TV at the time? And if you did you watch that debate on TV? Did you listen on the radio, or did you not listen or watch at all?
I don't even remember the debate. I don't. I've always tried to keep up with the news, but I don't remember the debate.
Hmm.
So I have no comment whatsoever on that.
Okay. And then, of course, it turns out in the same year, President Kennedy, by me calling him that, obviously he won, and he was running on the Democratic ticket. So I assume if you voted, you most likely voted for President Kennedy, or was him being Catholic something that made you step back? Because that was an issue back then.
Well, that was a concern for a lot of people because of him being a Catholic, but uh, I'm sure that I voted for him, but I'll have to say that I think that's his right. But there was concern about him being a Catholic, you know, because that just wasn't the understanding of most of the people of my knowledge. Let me put it that way.
Mm.
So, so yeah, there was a concern about Catholic, but I don't think that cost him any votes, you know, enough that he
Yeah.
would get it because he was seemed to be a intelligent man, put it that way.
Now, he is one of those people that his star burned bright, but not for very long, because in 1963, on the grassy knoll in Dallas, someone shot and killed him. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
When did you hear about that, and what were your thoughts on that? I imagine your thoughts with the death of FDR as a teenager will be much different than the assassination of JFK being a father, a husband, and all of that.
Well, John Kennedy, in my opinion, would have made a super president. You remember that Russia was going to take over Cuba
Mm.
back in those days, and he moved a boat or two down there and told the boys, "Don't come over here." So he had the respect of a lot of people. Let me put it that way. and here comes the assassination to him and everything, and that wiped all that out. But I think he would. Of course, we make our guesses what he would be, but I was happy with John Kennedy. Let me put it that way. I believe he would have been good for our country. He done proved that he was a man of his word, and he wasn't afraid to stand for what was right. And that's what we need in our government, is what I thought John Kennedy was. Okay?
Now, that makes me want to ask then, that same year, and then in 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, became president, and no one voted for him to be president. It's because of the assassination
Right.
that he became president.
Right.
What were your opinions of him? Because he and JFK were almost polar opposites.
Yeah. Well, I remember when Kennedy was shot, I was on the job, and I remember, of course, they had it televised and everything, and I remember that they flew Johnson in that night to Washington, the night that Kennedy was killed. They flew him in to recognize him as president, and so it wasn't a matter of voting; it's a matter of that he got the job, and no vote. But I reckon that we could have had worse too. So I guess Johnson lived up to a fair man in our place.
Mm. And I would assume, since he was the Democratic ticket after when he ran for election, you most likely voted for him because the South was still Democrat at that time.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember when I decided that I needed to vote for the man and not for the party. But somewhere back in those days, I got convinced that the Democratic Party had left what I thought was the way of American life. And so I went to the Republican Party. Goldwater, I don't know why your Goldwater's running, but Goldwater, I voted for Goldwater because I liked his platform that he put out. In fact, I'd sit up every night. I believe there's a whole night out in the West somewhere, and I'd sit up and watch it every night. And so I was convinced that the Democrats then had left what I thought was the American Democratic Party had left what I thought they stood for.
Well, that's a great segue into 1968. Multiple things happened in that year. One of the first things that I want to ask about is Richard Nixon. He was elected president. He was a Republican at the time. So what is your opinion on Nixon before what happened later with the scandal when he was running for election in 1968? First off, did you vote for him or the other guy? And what's your opinion of Nixon within his first couple years?
I really can't. I can't answer because I have no opinion of Nixon. I mean, in other words, to me, he was just our president, and I guess I just sliding along with the tide. I put it that way. So I don't have any opinion of Nixon. I really don't. I know there's some trouble back in there, but
yeah,
I really don't know what it was because I wasn't that interested in the situation at that time.
Now, there were some other things in that same year of 68 that happened. One of the major things is the Vietnam conflict transformed into the Vietnam War, although we never actually declared war. What was your opinion on Vietnam? Because technically the first death happened in either 46 or 48. We were involved in Vietnam for a long time, but it wasn't until 68 that it escalated from a conflict to people were calling it the war. And it was the first televised war.
Yeah. Well, of course, now here my information is what I pick up off the news, and I know that our boys went into places that we're still having people dying from it today. It's what was it, the Orange or something like that?
Agent Orange.
Agent Orange, a lot of them got, and Was there a win or lose in that, or was it just a battle of while and we quit it?
It was basically a draw on that one.
Yeah, there was, to my remembrance, that, as you said, was just a draw. And of course, a lot of our guys got this disease and things. Like I said, some of them are still here, so that was a bad situation. Let me put it that way.
And overall, I would say 1968. Every year has its good moments, but this one was a sad year overall. Because the other thing that happened in that year, I wanted to know your opinion of, or if you had any opinion, was both Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy were assassinated that same year.
They was.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any thoughts on either one of them and what they could have done, what they did already?
Yeah. Well, I well remember the killing of Martin Luther.
Mm.
In my mind, I can still see the balcony, him standing because, they had it televised over and over and over like that. And I often wondered if our government got that right. And who they wound up accusing, I'm not sure that our government dealt in a way that they should have in that situation.
A lot of people feel that there is some doubt in the Bobby Kennedy assassination as well as the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination. Did you have any remembrance of Bobby Kennedy, or was he?
No, not of Kennedy. Not that I remember. I just remember that how that on Martin Luther King, how that it's so panned out, and of course they made out a movie showing that it wasn't him, and if you listen to that movie, then they were right. It wasn't the one that they got for that, and I never did believe it that it was done like our country set apart. In other words, I think he was more involved in what got charged with. Okay.
Yeah. And then let's go from a sad year to a much happier year. 1969, just a year later, almost as if it was prophecy from JFK, we went to the moon. Now, did you watch that on television, and did you believe it? Because there were a lot of people, especially later, that say it was faked.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, yes, I watched it because I was interested in it, and I think they went, and I think they landed, and that was one said a great step for mankind, I believe it.
Yeah, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
For mankind, yeah. I always believed that was true. In fact, that's just a step, and now look how far we are now from that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe that was true. I believe I know our space program is good. That's what we need because everybody else has got it, and so we've got to have it if they got it.
Now, were you afraid of Sputnik going back into the 50s now? Were you, like many Americans, afraid of Sputnik? The first satellite in space was by the Russians, not America.
Yeah. What's that? What?
I said, did you have any fears or concerns with that? Because there was McCarthyism and the Red Scare was really at its height back in the 50s.
Yeah. Now, as far as fear or doubt, no, because I believe that our country is capable of accomplishing what needs to be, when it needs to be, and the time it needs to be. I believe that our country, we have people capable of handling any situation at any time as necessary. So I don't fear of other countries and other actions because I believe our country can take care of itself.
All right. Now, let's move a few years over. We're in 1974 now. The war in Vietnam's pretty much over, or as over as that kind of thing can be. Our boys are coming home, and then this Watergate thing starts happening. and then Richard Nixon resigns. A lot of people have changed their opinion on Nixon afterward versus during the scandal. Did you have any opinions of him? You said you didn't in '68. What about '74 during the scandal?
No, I remember the scandal, of course. In fact, I even forgot that he resigned or they threw him out there. What happened? But no, I wasn't that much interested in politics to get involved emotionally with it. So I have no opinion of that. Yeah.
All right. Well, then my next question is: do you have any opinion of the only president that no one voted for? Gerald Ford was sworn in when Nixon resigned, and he basically, the main thing people remember about him is he fell a lot.
I don't remember any of his actions.
Like I said, most people just remember he fell a few times, and that's pretty much it. The main thing he did was he gave a full pardon to Nixon. Did you think that was good, bad, or you don't care?
Well, I'll use the word don't care, but I don't remember it anyway.
Yeah. Now, this you might remember. There was in 76, 77, a new guy came on the political scene, and he had a slogan of "Who's Jimmy?" Jimmy Carter became our president. What was your opinion of Jimmy Carter? Because he came from Georgia. He was a Southerner, Democrat, and very new. No one had really heard of him before, which is why he had the slogan when he campaigned, "Who's Jimmy?"
Well, Jimmy Carter was an upright, dedicated Christian man. He went in there to do what is right. And I realized that when you get in those positions that you've got the horse trade. I mean, you can't have everything that you wanted, and you can't vote for everything that everybody wants you to vote. So you have to use your common sense. And I think Jimmy Carter was too deep of a Christian man to be president of the United States. That's really only lasted 4 years because the world fighting those who love Christ, and so Jimmy Carter was a man of, he brought born again in. If you remember, as his slogan was born again. He brought that in. That was one of his sayings, was born again, and that gets the devil round up when you start talking about that kind of stuff. So then there was enough people on that side of the fence, on the devil's side, then to vote him out in the 4 years. I think Jimmy Carter was a true man. I think that he got people up there that would not cooperate with him, and I think that it was time for him to get out of there because I think he was too dedicated. And the people that should have been backing him was against him. I think that's what happened to Jimmy Carter.
Now, I have to ask, you had said earlier that you went with Barry Goldwater and thought that the Democrat Party had sort of left its ideals. Now, here comes Jimmy Carter. He's a Democrat, but he's a Christian first, especially then. Did you vote for Jimmy, or did you vote the other way? And did you have any qualms about that, or are you like, this is the guy?
I'm sure I voted for Jimmy because I would have felt in my Christian faith that Jimmy Carter could make a change up there. But when you got so many people that don't stand for that which is right, and you got more on that side than you have on the side of Christ, then naturally they're going to vote him out. Yeah. So I'm sure I voted for Jimmy Carter because I thought Jimmy Carter was a true man.
And that makes me want to ask then, from 79 to 81, one of the biggest things in Jimmy Carter's presidency that really affected a lot of things about his presidency was the Iran hostage crisis. Do you remember anything about that, when Iran took some of our people hostage and Jimmy Carter was trying to get them back, and then of course it didn't happen until 81 with a new president?
No, I don't even remember that, truthfully tell you. I don't even remember that.
Okay.
I have no thoughts on that whatsoever.
All right. Well, then in about 1980, 1981, we had an actor of all people running for president, Ronald Reagan. Now, you said you had voted most likely for Jimmy Carter in 76 or 77. Did Reagan sway you, or did you go with Jimmy again? Because it was between the two of them, and for the first time in a long time, the incumbent did not win. It was Ronald Reagan that became president.
To be definitely, I'll answer it, and with uncertainty. I still think that I would have voted for Jimmy Carter because of what he stood for.
Mm.
I thought his dedication to Christ was enough for my vote. Like I said, in the years ago when I decided the other side wasn't marching to my tune, well, then I went to the man, not to go the party then.
So that makes me want to ask then, Ronald Reagan served 2 terms, and during the second election cycle, Jimmy Carter was not there. It was another man that was trying to be president, and the incumbent was, of course, Ronald Reagan. Now, Ronald Reagan won. Did he sway you with his presidency? Did you go with Reagan, or did you go with the other guy?
Well, this is maybe, I don't know truthfully, but I would say that I voted for Reagan then because he was in there, and if I remember, I was pleased with him. Of course, I mean, anyone up there, I have a right to disagree.
Yeah.
With certain things, but I'd say that I stay with him, and that's strictly a guess too.
All right. Well, the next thing is probably going to be a guess as well. 1988, Reagan's already served 2 terms. He can't run again. His vice president runs and wins. That'd be George Bush, Sr. Did you have any opinion of Bush?
No.
Because Bush, his entire presidency is basically defined by one thing, and that is the Gulf War. Did you think he was right, wrong, or are you unsure when Kuwait was invaded by Iraq and we went over there for the Gulf War to stop that? Was that the right thing to do?
I don't have a opinion because I don't remember anything about that. I don't remember the Gulf War. I know that wasn't on my learning stats at that time, so I have no idea.
Well, let's ask about something I know you're going to remember, and that's the all of the 1980s. Some special things happened, and you started having grandchildren. How was that? Not only were you a father of 3 children, but now they're starting to have children. How was it being a grandfather for the first time?
Just another to buy toys for, I guess. I think I have 8, 9 grandchildren maybe now, Taylor. But I'm always proud of my grandchildren. As they do. To me, they've always acted like people. You know what I'm trying to say? So I'm proud of my grandchildren. I think I'm a buddy to every one of them. I hope so, at least, put it that way.
Yeah. And now, for those of you watching, I don't know who's going to be watching this, but yes, I know he had grandchildren before the 80s, but I'm an 80s baby, and I know he had a couple there, so that's why I mentioned it in the 80s, just so y'all know.
Yeah.
So my next question then would be 1992. How are you feeling with your going with the man rather than the party? Because in 1992, this fresh governor from Arkansas came and became president, Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm. I think I voted against Bill Clinton. I don't think I voted for Bill Clinton because I think by that time I'd about decided that I better stick with the Republican Party.
Now, having said that, what was your opinion during his second term in 1998? We had another scandal, Monica Lewinsky. and all that went on with that. Were you relieved that you didn't vote for him, or what opinions did you have? Do you remember that?
Well, I thought they should have relieved him. Is what I think he should have happened. But again, politics and the other side keep him in there. In my thinking, sure I voted against him.
Now, in 2000, we had an election, and there was a big kerfuffle with Al Gore and George W. Bush, Bush Sr.'s son, in Florida with those, remember the hanging chads? When they tried to recount because it was all on Florida who was going to be president. And eventually the courts said it's Bush. But do you remember that? Did you have any opinion on that? Or were you just like everybody else, just hurry up and tell us who it is?
I just played it. I didn't know nothing. That's about the best way to put it. I mean, now since you mentioned it, I remember it, but I don't remember any action that I would have taken.
And then, of course, 2004, George W. Bush ran for re-election, and of course we went back to Iraq and then Afghanistan. And 2004, I said we would end at 2005, but 2004 is where we'll stop as far as the history goes. But let's back up. Let's go all the way back to the 40s now. I want to talk about, this is a ministry of the church. Do you remember when you became a Christian, or is it so long ago it just melds in with your history?
I remember, I can't tell you the date now, but I can tell you about the date. Yeah, I remember because the Lord talked to me. I think, I think I heard him in actual voice. He was tired of messing with me, because he'd been calling me, and I was hard-headed, and we was having a revival, and this would have been on Tuesday night, I guess now, and like I said, I won't put a specific date, but approximately this would have been in 55. It was before Ken was born, so it had to be right in there, because Ken wasn't born at this time. Anyway, we was having a revival in church, and like I said, God had been calling me, and that he had a job for me. And I said, no, I'm not interested. But anyway, 2 or 3 had went up that night, and then we come home, and I went to bed, and like I said, I think I heard his voice. And he said, Kyle, he said, today is the day of salvation. You accept me tonight, or spend eternity in hell. And when he talks to you like that, I got up, put on my clothes, and started hearing the preacher. And we prayed and prayed through. So I accepted Christ after he had talked to me. And like I said, I really think that I heard an actual voice.
Now, you said that was around 55. You're not 100% sure, but it'd be before Kim was born.
Yeah.
So usually the story goes, the girl goes to church, the boy wants the girl, so whether he believes or not, he starts going to church. So were you going to church at the time with Dorothy?
Yes, we were. Back then we were messing with some of the young people, but I wasn't a Christian. And we were going to church. See, Dot, she started playing the piano along about this time, and she played there the rest of her life. She was our pianist out here.
So I assume then, were all your children baptized at Oak Ridge?
Yes. Well, no, sprinkled.
Yeah.
Sprinkled, yeah. But it's to us Methodists, that's baptism.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you feel like you needed to be baptized when God spoke to you, or were you baptized at earlier in your life and said, well, that'll work?
No, I don't know where it was, the Sunday after revival or the second Sunday. I was baptized, and was baptized in Flint Creek, and there on Bud Weaver Road after you leave Bond Bridge Road, you go down there and you know there's a curve
Mhm.
like that. Well, right after you make that second curve there, I was baptized right off the side there, and of course the church all went out there, and I was baptized on Sunday afternoon there in the creek out there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
is Oak Ridge the only church you have been a member of?
Yes.
Is that the same for Miss Dorothy? Was that the only one she'd ever been a member of?
Right.
Okay.
I
So
never wanted because I felt like that God put a special call on me, that He had a job for me to do, to be a leader in the church. That's what He wanted me to be, and I've always felt that was my obligation. That was my call to be in the church and in helping the leadership of the church. But I've always felt that that's what He called me to do, but He told me what I need to do first. Yeah.
now you had said that you got married and you had to go to Mississippi. Was that a court wedding or a church wedding?
House wedding.
House wedding.
Yeah.
Okay.
About 4 o'clock in the morning.
Early house wedding.
Yeah.
All right. So, as your children are growing up, they start getting married and go off and they go to different churches and whatnot. What kept you at Oak Ridge versus going where one of your children go? Did you have a call specifically to Oak Ridge, you think?
I'm going to say yes, because like I said, that's where He wanted to put me. And see, we had some gentlemen in there, like John Harden, Earl Legg, Olin Cooper, Dean Vez, Irby Thompson, and I'm sure, and Dennis Wallace. I'm sure I'm leaving out one or two.
Mm.
And they were the big men. They were the older men of the church. And here I am, about 18. I've been more than that, because it came. And they threw me in the fire. They said, "Here you go," and they backed me. I mean, all those men and women, the women that had to back me, and in other words, they pushed me with prayer. And so I've never thought about going anywhere else to church. My devotion is to our church here in our community. Is my preference then, and it always has been. And unless I have something on my mind, it's going to be until I finish. Okay.
Now, Oak Ridge at the time was Oak Ridge ME Church, Methodist Episcopal.
Yeah.
Methodist was the denomination and Episcopal was the orientation, the way of governance was Episcopal.
Yeah.
Now, 1968, something happened. The Methodist Episcopal and the United Brethren came together and became the United Methodist Church.
Right.
Did you have any opinions when that happened and y'all became UMC instead of ME?
Well, yes, I had an opinion, and still have an opinion on that deal. To my understanding, do you understand what I said? To my understanding, the United Brethren was in trouble financially or something. I don't know what the deal was, and so they joined us for security. Now that was my interpretation. That might be the wrong interpretation, but that was my interpretation. So you asked me a question. Yeah, I have never been for us joining up to the United, because I thought we were going along and ourselves and our church was, operating good with itself and everything. So I was never disheartened at the United, but I just think we just didn't need them.
So that makes me ask then, as far as denominations go, the United Methodist Church is actually very young. But from 68 to just a few years ago, something happened and Oak Ridge left the United Methodist Church, and we are now, Oak Ridge is part of the Association of Independent Methodists. Right. Do you have any opinions on all of that and when that happened? And Should we have left? Do you think we should have stayed? What was the issue there, you think?
Absolutely, because the United was standing for these sexual acts of people that in Romans they can find out that that is a sin according to the Bible. Now, not me, but according, if you read Romans, the first chapter, you'll find out that the United Methodist now stands for things that is, in my opinion, is not biblical. And when the church leaves something that is not, you pulls in something that is not biblical, it's time to get out. And so I'm proud we got out. I hate that we had to get out because I thought the Methodist Church was fine. I liked our operation of the United, the way it was distribution of its financial part as we moved in. I like that part of it because we had such an area that we were responsible for, the church now I'm talking about it as a whole. But when you start trying to tell me that murder is good if you do it with a certain type of pistol, then I'm not going to believe you. In other words, what I'm trying to say is,
right,
if the Bible says it's wrong, then don't ask me about it. Why don't you go look it up, and you go to Romans first chapter, and if you agree with United, well then you agree with them. You don't agree with me because I don't agree with them.
all right.
Okay.
Now, next question I would ask is, how were you involved? How were you and Miss Dorothy involved in the church? You had mentioned she was a piano player. I believe in her obituary it said 67 years she was the piano player. Now that's a good long time to be a piano player. What were some of your favorite things? What events do you remember? How were you involved, and what all happened at Oak Ridge? Because you've probably seen a lot.
Yeah. Well, I've seen quite a few ministers pass in our time. You know, used to the Methodist Church, a pastor could only stay 4 years on a charge, and you had to move. And so we never had that operation to where that a man had to leave that I remember now. Maybe we did, but I don't remember it. But we never had that kind of trouble. But we wanted to see, when I joined the church, we had preaching one time a month. That's all we had. And we started a singing on the second Sunday night. And we had a singing, and we had people almost sticking out the windows for singing because we wanted another service at Oak Ridge. So we had people come in everywhere to singing in our church, which had helped our church and helped us as individuals. And eventually, it moved out. It's like I was in the quartet affiliated with the Soul Seekers Quartet, directly and indirectly, for 49 years. We carried the message. Ken took it over, and I turned it over to him, and we represented Christ in our operation. And in our church, working there, like I said, Dot, she worked with WSCS in our church, and she played the piano, and she took care of that part of it, and without any complaint whatsoever. And then, of course, for them, most of the time that I was on the board. Now, while I'm complaining, I'm still complaining that after I joined the church, the Methodist Church did away with the stewards of the church. And so I was a steward in the church for I don't know how long before they could. And I still disagree with the Methodist Church for doing away with the stewards. Because if you go in there when Paul's talking about the elders, the deacons and things and their qualification, you say, well, we had an official board. We did. We had an official board. But over my span of churches, I've seen where the official board got us in trouble. Because when you have 15 to 20 people on the official board, you got 15 to 20 people, and they're not going to agree all the time. If you got 5 or 6 stewards or deacons, then them guys can work it out. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. I've never liked the official board of the Methodist Church, no. I think we ought to go back they ought to go back to the steerage. Is what I think about. So all that time then, I've been in the church, and I just as a steward in the latter years, because I've only lasted a while after I joined. But I think it's more. I think the church ought to have stewards or something other. What do you call them? Stewards or deacons or heroes or whatever you want to call them. But have a lesser number, because a lesser number of people will agree, and 15 or 20 will just cause trouble sometimes. And I've seen that happen. So I've experienced that side of it too.
All right. Now, one thing I wanted to ask about was in about, I believe it was 2019, Miss Dorothy passed away. Now, I'm not going to ask you how you felt or anything like that, because that's insensitive. But I want to know, what did the church do? And when I say church, I mean Oak Ridge specifically, and then just any Christian you knew. How did they help? What comfort did they offer? What did anyone say? What do you remember about that? What did the church do? Did they do what is expected of them in Scripture, or were they lacking?
Oh, well, I think I think our church give respect, if you want to call it respect, for her, you know, to me, I never even thought about it, but the people were just wonderful to me, and Dottie and Patty and Ken, you know. Certainly we had no negative, and everybody that I know was in sympathy, you know, with us, you know. So no, nobody in our church was negative that I know, would put it that way. And certainly, you know, Dot she didn't bother nobody, so there wasn't nobody, as far as I'm concerned, there wasn't nobody proud she was gone. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
No, and I wasn't proud she was gone. So as far as I'm concerned, it was done religiously expectable. Put it that way.
10 years from now, if you're still with us, you'll be 106 years old.
I hope not.
If you're still here, or even if you've gone, in 10 years, where would you like to see Oak Ridge?
Well, you know, I'd like to see the church grow in spirit and in number, because numbers used right brings people to the church and to the Lord. The work of Satan is evident from the time you walk out that door. There's temptations out there. So to all of us members of Oak Ridge, I just think we just need to be dedicated more to our church and to the doctrine of our church, what our church preaches, which is Jesus Christ crucified, buried, dead, and risen. And you know, you can't make people accept Christ, but we can offer it to them. And I hope that we, in our lives, well, I pray for each of my members of our church at night. You know, our church seems to be in love with one another. I don't see no hard feelings. I don't see no disgust. I don't see nobody trying to pull away. And I think we need to stay that way, loving one another, and be a witness to the outside world. You know, as the old saying goes, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. All we do is offer Christ and offer lives. You know, when we step out and go out to town up there and hit the street, hit Walmart or whatever it might be, well, you know, if we're not peculiar people, that's what the Bible calls us Christians to be, peculiar people, you know. If we're not peculiar people, and we walk in there, and our actions go to the worldly side of things, of bad language, bad actions, and that kind of stuff, then we're against the church. We need to pay attention to our mouths, our actions, our looks, our deeds, and our walks and our talks. And if we do that, sooner or later, if God wants our church to grow, well, we'll have it now. You know, all these years, I've seen it when it got up there close to 100, and I've seen it lower than it is now. And I've seen it when our finances, we operated, you know, in fact, I know a few times when our stuff that we give to Birmingham, that we had to cut it a little short, you know, but we still give, because I said I like the message, a way the spread of it, you know, there. Of course, our church we're in now is supposed to have the same obligation, but we just need to work with one another, be a witness to people outside. You can't make them come, but you can act right and invite them to church.
All right. Now, this will be the last question I ask for the interview. Now, we had imagined you at 106 in 10 years with that last question. So now let's imagine if the Lord were to call you home tonight, what message would you want to say to whoever's watching this in the future in the camera, be it someone in your family or a complete stranger? What message would you like to impart to people?
Well, I would like to present the thing as a witness to what Christ has meant to me down through the years, and knowing that, you know, all this is these many years that, you know, the Bible says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So I fit in that picture. But when you go over there to Paul's writings, and he's talking about Jesus, and Jesus says, if you come unto me, he says, I'll in no wise cast you out. So that's the way that I live, is that I know that things happen, I do things that shouldn't be done, but I do know where I go and ask forgiveness. So if you need help in life, then I think it's found in Christ. And maybe that might be a witness to somebody. Okay?
Okay. Well, thank you for the interview, sir. It was a blessing. I appreciate it.
Well, that's what I got to say.
All right. Now, okay. So